Alright, now we come to the endgame phase. In the endgame, there are 3 steps of planning, and they are: step number 1, evaluation. Okay, so players evaluate, or you analyze the position deeply to determine which side has the advantage and which side has the advantage and is playing for a win, and which side is trying to avoid losing the game. Step number 2, pawns. In the end game, pawns are very important because they can promote.
Yeah.
Okay, so regarding pawns, we want to advance our passed pawns in order to promote them. Also, we want to attack our opponents with pawns. We'll look at examples of these as we go. Step number 3, we come to pieces, and we want to activate our pieces in order of their strength. For example, if you've got a queen on board, you're looking at the moves of the queen first because it's worth 9 points. Then after the queen, you look at the rook. So in order of their numerical value: queen, rook, bishop, knight, like that. I'll show you this one thing that I'll also show you in this clip. All right. So this is the position that we'll use, okay, to demonstrate the steps of planning in the endgame. All right. Like I said, 3 steps: evaluation, pawns, and pieces. Which type of pawns are we advancing? Okay. So the types of pawns that we want to advance in the endgame are a separate passed pawn, connected passed pawns, a protected passed pawn, a distant passed pawn or outside passed pawn, and a pawn majority. We can create passed pawns from all these pawns. Others are already passed pawns. And we want to attack the opponents with pawns, which are isolated pawns, backward pawns, and advanced pawns. Okay, here's some examples. So this is an example of a distant passed pawn or an outside passed pawn. So if you have got this in the endgame, you want to advance it and promote it into queen. Then here, this is an example of an advanced pawn. Remember, when we're talking about territory, this is black's territory, this is white's territory. Just like that game we saw when we were looking at the middle game example.
Yeah.
The game between Grandmasters Boris Gelfand and Ioannis Papayan. That pawn is now in white's territory. So this is an advanced pawn. It's no longer on black side, it's on white side. We attack this because it's far from home. We can easily gang up on this piece. So this is an example of an advanced pawn. This is the type of pawn that we attack. Okay. The other, regarding pieces now. This is the secret that I wanted to tell you. So in the end game, see, the numerical value of pieces is the pawn is worth 1 point. The knight is worth 3 points. The bishop is worth 3 points. The rook is worth 5 points. The queen is worth 9 points. The king is worth the game. Once the king is captured, then it's game over. So normally there is no numerical value on the king. In the end game, the situation changes. In the end game, the king has a numerical value of 4 points. The king becomes an attacking piece. In the end game, the king becomes an attacking piece. So in order to activate your pieces according to their numerical strength value, the king must have value. Okay? So if you are in the end game and you've got a rook, and obviously you always have a king on the board. So you've got a rook and some minor pieces. So you look at the possibilities of the rook first. You're activating your pieces according to their strength. So you look at the possibilities of the rook first. Afterwards, the possibilities of the king, because it's worth 4 points. It has a higher numerical value than the bishops and knights. All right, so you'll see this in practice. All right, now let's go to examples. All right, so before we get to the practical examples, let me show you the types of pawns that we try to advance and promote and the pawns that we attack. There are many types of pawns, so I have to show you each, all of them one by one. All right, so this is an example of an isolated, a separate passed pawn in the endgame. This one, an example of a separate passed pawn. It's just on its own. It has no pawns to support it. in its advance to promotion. Separate passed pawn. In the endgame, you just advance and with the idea of promoting it into a queen, a rook, a bishop, or anything. Then you've got connected passed pawns. These connected passed pawns, for example, in this example, they're on the 6th rank. When they are on the 6th rank like this, they're even stronger than a rook. They will promote. A rook cannot stop 2 pawns on the 6th rank. So they will advance. Good. The third type of pawn is a protected passed pawn. This type of pawn is very strong. If you've got this in the endgame, you've got a huge advantage. Why? Because this king, it cannot go far from this pawn. It cannot go out of this box. Look, when you want to check how if a pawn will promote, the pawn and the king, okay, the relation between a pawn and the king and promotion, you make a square. You look at this pawn, you make a diagonal line straight to the 8th rank, and then you make a square like this. If the king gets out of this square, okay, if the king cannot get back into this square after the pawn starts moving, the pawn will promote. So the king must always be in this square to avoid, in order for it to catch this pawn before it promotes. So that means your king will be free to capture all these pawns. You can exchange this, advance this. If they capture, you capture. Then king here, you capture all these pawns. The king must always play guard duty. He must always defend this pawn. It cannot capture it because it's already protected. So this is a huge advantage in the endgame, the protected passed pawn. Number 4, a distant passed pawn or an outside passed pawn, as it is commonly called. This is often referred to as an outside passed pawn. It is distant passed pawn. Again, this is usually used in decoying. So you advance this pawn, the king has to come and defend the pawn, and your king will go to this side and capture black's pawns. The other type of pawn, a pawn majority. Here we can create a passed pawn with 2, because we've got 3 versus 2, we can have 4 versus 3. We always be able to create a passed pawn because we've got more pawns than they have on this side. So this is also another advantage in the endgame. You use this to create a passed pawn in the endgame. So those are the 5 types of pawns that we advance in the endgame to promote into a new queen or any other piece. The pawns that we attack, there are 3 types, okay? The first one is this one, isolated. There are no pawns on the B file, there's no pawn on the D file to defend this one. So this is an isolated pawn. We can attack it and force the opponent's pieces to be tied down in defending this pawn. Type number 2, backward pawns. This one and this one. We can also put pressure on them. They need pieces to defend them. Type number 3, an advanced pawn. This one that we saw earlier. So these are 5 types of pawns that we advance and 3 types of pawns that we attack. Now we get to the example, and I'll show you all this in practice. Right, now we look at how we activate our pieces in order of their numerical value. Okay, always remember, in the end game, the king becomes an attacking piece and has a numerical value. Alright, so this is the position that we're looking at. Okay, this position is from an endgame study by the late Russian chess theoretician and endgame composer, Grandmaster Alexei Alexeyevich Troitsky, who to this day is regarded by many as the founder of the art of composing chess studies. So the purpose of this study is to demonstrate how players must conduct their forces in the endgame, how they activate their pieces, how they use their pieces in the endgame. Okay. So we want to activate our pieces in order of their numerical value. So which is the strongest piece here?
The king.
Okay, so the king has 4 points, the knight 3, the pawn 1. So it's the king. We cannot advance these pawns. They're blocked. Yeah. So we go to pieces. So the king is the strongest piece. We want to advance it on its most forward square. We want to place it on its most active square. So we want to advance, we want to activate our pieces in order of their numerical value, and at the same time want to immobilize the opponent's pieces. They should have less options. Okay, so if we play our king to f6, the black king can go to, the black king will have the option of going to f8 or h8. If we play our king to h6, the black king won't have the option to go to f8 because the bishop will be lost. It can only go to h8. So we've reduced the number of options it has, and we've activated our strongest piece and tied down the opponent. Okay, king h6. That's the idea. That's what we're doing then. Okay, so the king has to move to h8. Now we improve. If we can still improve the position of the king, we would, because the strongest piece. But now we cannot improve the king anymore, so we improve the other piece, the knight. Knight to h4. The bishop cannot move. If the bishop moves to g8, knight to g6 is checkmate. So the king is the only piece that can move. So we've immobilized the bishop. The bishop cannot move. The king can only go to g8 and h8, g8 and h8. All right. All right. So now we see. Let's really play the whole game. Okay. First, we improve the king. Okay. King to h6, attacking the bishop and tying down the bishop and the king, immobilizing both. Okay. Then we improve the knight. If the bishop moves, knight to g6 is checkmate. So the king has to go to g8. Now the bishop cannot move. If the bishop moves here, we'll take it anyway. So we can improve the position of the knight. So now we have to find a better square for the knight. If the king moves to f8, the bishop is lost. If the bishop moves to g6, the bishop is lost. So they'll only play g8 and h8. They have no other moves. They're tied down. We've immobilized them. So you want to mobilize your pieces and immobilize your opponent's pieces so they cannot move. You've got them tied down. King h8, knight to e5. Same idea. If the bishop moves, then checkmate again. So you're threatening. It's not random. King back to g8. Now knight to c6. What's the idea? If the king moves back, the knight can even be played here. e7. If the bishop goes back, knight g6, checkmate. The king cannot come back. Everything is tied down. King back, knight e7. The king cannot come back. The king has no squares. It cannot move. The bishop, if it moves to here, checkmate. If it moves to here, king will take, or the knight will take, and then white has more material and they'll win eventually. Okay. So we'll look at more examples as we go. So this is just an example to demonstrate how we use our pieces in the endgame.